agree.
Recording in progress.
What's that? Okay, I'd like to call the select board meeting for the town of Essex for Monday, December 5th, 2022 to order. First order of business, are there any agenda additions or changes from staff?
None from staff.
Okay, none, any requested from board members? No? Okay, well, we will move on to public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time of the agenda when attendees can speak to the board on town business items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak during public to be heard, you can either raise your hand in the in Zoom by putting your cursor over the reactions button. It should open up a panel that includes a raise hand button. If you're in the room, you can just raise your physical hand. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to speak during public to be heard? See any hands? Anybody online? Public to be heard. I don't see any hands up there either, so let's move on to the first business item, which is discussion about proposed charter changes from the Charter Review Committee. Do we have from the Charter Committee? Come on up, introduce yourself. And,
Can I introduce?
don't move the mic,
it.
please.
Oh,
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, this is
Yeah.
Lauren Lehman, who chaired the Charter Review Committee.
Thank you, Don. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. What's supposed to? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chairman Watts and all the select board for having me here tonight and for letting me be a part of this committee. I wanted to start, if I may, to just give you an idea of our process and kind of what we understood our mission to be, and then give you, I'm happy to, I reviewed your comment, Chairman Watts. Vice Chair Delphia, I was unable to open your document in a way on my phone, and I only had my phone at the time.
Okay.
So, but I'm happy to do a walkthrough with folks to explain some of the changes we did, and I can address questions at that time if that's what the board chooses to do. So in terms of our process and our mission, when we first convened at the beginning of September, we understood our mission to be review the document, incorporate changes as from the public, from our own ideas, from research, and then we had to draft the language we wanted to see so that the attorney could then review that language. We had, at that time, 9 meetings in which to do that. So we had a very tight schedule. We established a work plan where we had 2 to 3 meetings for idea collection, where we would have public, internally, research, just trying to gather as many ideas as possible. Then we had 2 to 3 meetings. We allotted time for discussion, debate, review of what we agreed on, what policies, we wanted to incorporate. And then we had 2 meetings for drafting, reviewing, revising. As you can imagine, as we went through, things kind of bled into each other, overlapped. A policy would come up as we'd gather it and we'd start the debate. So there was some back and forth. But mostly we stuck to that plan, and we did come out with a very thorough revised document. 2 points I'd like to make is, when we got to the end of our collection of ideas stage and we were about to jump in, or I think we'd had 1 recommendations meeting, we went around the room and we stated things that we had really come to the top for us, and we were what values we wanted to see or what changes we wanted to make. And we all very much coalesced around the ideas of improving the document's clarity, consistency, transparency, participation, accessibility, and inclusion. So a lot of the changes you see in the document were for adding clarity. We reorganized because we wanted the document to read and flow. If you're just somebody who's never seen a charter before, you wanted to be able to understand, okay, this is a section about what the select board does. This is a selection about town meeting. This is how you adopt an ordinance. This is what the town manager does. We also went through and tried to remove anachronisms. There were some places that it wasn't clear what was going on. And then we wanted to, there's many different areas of, inconsistencies, or several different areas. So we tried to address those in our document. Then in addition to that, we had great feedback from the town staff. We had great feedback from the public, and we tried to incorporate those changes. We also had significant policy requests, both from committee members and for external public members, that we did incorporate for the most part. Now, we had, I think, 28 votes, 2 of which were not unanimous. With those 2 votes that were not unanimous, we only had 1 dissenting view. So that shows 2 things. I don't want and this is what is crucial to what I think the committee wants you to understand. This document before you is a proposal. We incorporated policies that we thought fit within a charter almost by default. Some of us were strongly in support of those policies. Some of us just felt that 5 appointees should not be making that policy decision for an entire town, and that elected representatives or the public themselves should be debating and reviewing them. So Chairman Watts, I saw in your comments a lot of times this should be a discussion of the select board and staff. Absolutely. That was absolutely our intention. We included all those proposals because we really thought that these policies should be considered. To that end, there was one policy we did not include, but was strongly recommended by the committee. We didn't include it because the language itself was very temporal. It was a one-time study, and we didn't feel that a one-time thing should be in a perpetual continuous document, like a charter. So that recommendation was for the study of establishing wards and districts in the town and neighborhood assemblies. We didn't have the time or capacity to study how to make those wards, make those districts, make that kind of local neighborhood by neighborhood establishments. And yet, as I said, putting a one-time study in a perpetuate document didn't really fit. So the board or the committee strongly recommends to the board that such a study be considered as part of all the other policies that you're seeing before you tonight. And then, so I think that really sums it up for us. Again, I think the process was very collaborative and collegial until we had some challenging couple of meetings at the end. What I really hope that comes out of this process is that there is a engaged, comprehensive debate on these policies. The process, I did my best. We all did our best. It's never perfect. What I really hope this doesn't devolve into is personal attacks. I'm a mom with 3 young kids, ages just turned 4. So 3 for most of this process, 6 and 10. I work full time. I volunteer in other capacities in this town. I had no political agenda coming in here, except I'm an administrative lawyer. And I thought, hey, if anybody likes writing a charter, this girl does. So that was my only goal. And I'm, if folks want to throw mud, that's fine. But I really hope that the focus can remain on the policy, the content of the document, what we really hope to achieve. Like there was no sneaky agenda or anything going on here. So I thought we were really doing well in terms of collaboration and inclusion, and I hope that's reflected in the process. And I'm happy to do a walkthrough because I really do think we have responses to a lot of your questions, but I'll defer obviously to the board on that.
Great, thank you. Don, you participated in this committee as well. Do you have anything you want to?
I have to say, this is the hardest working committee I think I've ever served on, as far as time commitment and work and research that went into this. And they had awesome discussions, and everybody had an equal say in it. I like the fact that the town, town employees had input, the public had input. We had input from, research that was done by others, and it was a great process, and they worked very hard.
Yeah, obviously.
I'm very impressed.
A lot of work went into this. Yeah. The one the one thing I'm unsure of is whether we can get through this entire proposal in time to implement it. Like not, or at least not all of it. I guess the time scale we're on is we would need to adopt a charter change by January 3rd and then have final revisions done by February 6th in order to have it voted on March 7th. So there's a lot here. We haven't yet had the opportunity to have Bill Ellis do our legal counsel do a full review of it.
May I speak to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So absolutely. I think a lot, we realized we had 9 weeks. So a lot of those policies we said, if there was a year or another committee or something, not that we necessarily would participate in it, but, if there was this additional opportunity, a lot of these deserve further discussion, further involvement for the town and select board consideration. I think one thing that we did feel strongly about, and I think we could accomplish in this round, would be some reorganization and clarifying of terms and consistencies and eliminating anachronisms. So if you decide to do 2 rounds, which
Yeah. So any thoughts how we want to proceed here? I know there are. I did send. You've all seen my comments. There's 4 pages of them. Print it out. I also noted that there are 7 kind of new initiatives in there. One is the power to set fees. I know. Tracy, you would ask the question about can't we do that already? And said, well, it's like dog license fees are set by the state. We can't change those. There are some municipalities that license cats. There's that's the intent around that. But anyway, that's the. I guess I shouldn't start answering questions. So the power to set fees. There's the just cause eviction section in there. Recall of select board members, which you may recall, no pun intended, that a resident came in asking for that and was suggesting that if we didn't proceed with going that way, he would come back with would try to pull a petition together to have us go in that direction. This gives us the opportunity to write the section ourselves rather than have it presented to us. Local option tax is in there, a section about that, which we already have the ability to do. So that's a little, I'm not sure about that, why that's in there, but we can talk about it. There's a transition to a DRB. There's establishment of an energy coordinator and addition of Commissioner of Public Safety. Those are the 7 big things that are in there. And then a lot of it is, like you said, rearrangement. I mean, I've been pretty involved with referring to the charter a lot in my tenure as a select board member, and I often know what the content is, but I can't for the life of me figure out what page it's on. I can read through it 3 times and still not find it.
Well, now you can. It's all
Right.
condensed. So it's really easy to find.
It's gone from 8 pages to 13, but it's
But it
I think
flows,
It's
Andy.
organized a little better, and there, so some of the sections are copy pasted. Some are it's slight language variations in them. And so I don't know.
I think in not speaking, and Lauren can explain why those 7 are in there, because basically that is what we heard from town officials and from the public, that they would like to see this included in the charter as we come up with the new town of Essex charter. So that was why I believe that was incorporated into it.
many of them were. Several were from committee members. Several were from members of the public.
So how do we want to proceed? Do we want to talk about those 7 initiatives? Do we want to, do we want to attempt a section by section review? Does it make more sense? Do we have a legal review? I don't know what we.
Yeah, I spoke to Bill Ellis, who's the town attorney, for those who may not know, today. When he got the charter review, he just has not had time to review it. It was so comprehensive. As Andy mentioned, we're on a pretty tight timeline to get something warned and ready for town meeting. So if you wanted staff to vet it, Bill Ellis to vet it. My recommendation would be to absolutely hear what the reasoning is behind some of these things. But if you want to move forward, pick one or two priority things that we can focus on in order to give it a good review, give a good legal review of what those changes might be, so we can then bring that to voters for March.
All right, thanks, Greg.
May I ask, Tracy, you had questions too? I didn't see those, so I don't know, but
Yeah.
were they somewhat what Andy had on his list?
They were
or-
pretty much in line. I mean, same themes.
So maybe if we did let Lauren go ahead and explain the reasoning for those 7, that might help clear up some of the questions. So maybe.
All right.
I'll make a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate all of the work that went into this, and I know that it's no easy task. But as I was reading through, and I'm got a little echo going on, but I had found a couple different things that I wasn't sure of, and things that I need more reading on and understanding of, and I started to dig back on how we got to a charter committee throughout the process of this year. And one of the main goals, which Andy mentioned, was the recall provision. So I was kind of thinking in my mind, we could focus on the recall provision and maybe some language, and maybe if there's 1 or 2 items that are important in there that aren't as extensive as far as the legalness and review and the process, then maybe we could get 3 changes or 2 changes or 1 change or whatever it may be. Focus on them, make them dead set, get it for a vote, and then, we're going to have this process every year. I think, like you said, we kind of started late in the game, and I feel like there's a lot that can be done, but it's also the charter of the town. I think that not that you guys aren't putting forth the best, proposed changes, but I think it's something that we seriously need to consider on taking our time and making sure that we put forth a final copy per se. Not that it can't be changed, but those are just my thoughts, and I really appreciate all the work that you guys put into it. It's clear how much went into it. So
Okay, thanks, Ethan. Kendall, I saw your hand up too. Did you want
It
to?
was just your questions were very relevant, all of them. There were a couple in there that I was really curious to hear the reasoning behind. So
Yep.
I'm comfortable with following your lead.
All right, great. All right, so I guess the
answer your questions. I think that would you want to do that? Or
so I'm not sure I want to go through 4 pages of questions directly. I think what maybe let's start with the 7 new
The 7.
initiatives of the power to set fees. That's something that you can share. Where did the language come from is one of the questions around that, and what's the intent?
Absolutely. So we rewrote the ordinances a little bit. Greg had asked for authority and this is from the South Burlington Charter.
Okay.
So this was in response to Greg's request. And then the next one is just cause eviction. We heard from Rights and Democracy and Tom Proctor. Pretty much, I think 3 or 4 times. He's been around Vermont quite a bit this session or this past couple months, and that is their language.
So sorry, the language came from where? From
Rights and Democracy, and Tom, they're an organization that's pushing just cause eviction amendments to charters throughout Vermont, and we're responsible for Burlington's charter amendment last year.
So I know a couple of municipalities have sent charter changes with that to the legislature. The governor vetoed them, is my understanding. Is the language that's in here consistent with what's gone to the legislature before, or?
Yes, my understanding from Mr. Proctor, and again, to Ethan's point, if the board chooses to focus on just recall or whatever, that's absolutely fine. We incorporated it because it was recommended to us so strongly. And some support it and some, just wanted further consideration. I understand it to be exactly the same language as previously. The understanding this time being with a stronger majority in the legislature. Last time they lost the veto override by 1 vote, and this time they anticipate having the the votes to overturn any vetoes. The reason to have it in here is because it contradicts state law. And of course, if the legislature approves a document that contradicts state law, it grants the town that unique authority. But absent this provision in this charter, state law would control. So that's the approach right now that they're taking.
Is there justification for having very specific language in there about how the ordinance must be written?
Again, this is that we I think Rights and Democracy and Tom Proctor would be better served explaining this language to you, but I think the purpose for that was to address specific issues that they see in the rental and housing community right now. So for example, those contract provisions, all of those are to address issues of landlords' different ways of evicting somebody, raising rent, and then re-entering the market, so there were concerns in our discussion about the specificity of it again, and there were those that saw this as a true issue and a way to address it, and we could not come to an absolute agreement, but we also agreed that you all have the responsibility and not us. So
Right.
So we voted to include it and to bring it to you.
Okay, any other questions on that one? I guess just to step back to the prior one, the fee setting one, again, that was something that had come up. I don't remember who was on the board at the time, where we had talked about setting fees for, I forget what it was.
I think it was for dog licenses to try to increase some of those fees, and we planned to do it. And then I think Susan must have found it, or somebody brought it to our attention that, like you said earlier, the state sets the fees. We found out that it was South Burlington has the ability in its charter to set dog licensing
Right,
fees.
it's in there.
I think it was to recoup the cost of mailing the tax.
I think so,
right?
yeah. Yep.
And the fact that we spend thousands of dollars on like bags for the Indian Brook, and that was required by our stormwater permits. So and so the other thing, I guess, around that is, I know that the state also specifies that the majority of dog license fees actually support rabies prevention or rabies control. Do we need to have some, do you know? I mean, you may not know the answer. What did it come up as to whether, whether we need to have anything specific about, and maybe you don't know that answer.
I don't know the answer to that. I do know, in my research, I found that there's two different kind of types of charters when it comes to ordinances. And one type is what Essex had before, which is general broad authority. Another type is broad authority plus the select board shall have authority to do this, 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 and this, and this, including, and there's, 5 or 6 different types of ordinances, the last one being and anything else for the public health of the town.
Mm-hmm.
But those, I think it just is a way of pointing out. And one of those, that's what South Burlington had. So South Burlington's was part of a broader section of authorities that the select board has to charge fees, to regulate stormwater, all those things. So that's why and I tried to meld the two a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't know in terms of how it relates to state law. I do know, obviously, several towns, including South Burlington, have figured out a way to do this and use those fees.
Okay. Right. So I guess there's a little hint there. I'd like to have the opportunity for questions for each of the issues as you go through them.
Absolutely.
You jumped right to the next one. Just not a criticism. I was just pointing out that.
No, absolutely. Please
So, right.
interrupt me too if you want to. I am not offended. So also, as we went through, one of the general comments I wanted to make is you asked a lot where other language came from, and it came from other charters. We all looked at other charters. The next big one, there's some questions about salaries and policies there. Recall 205, so 117-205. So I think we heard from the same constituent that you did. He brought in several samples from other towns in Vermont of other recall provisions. we had the same inclination that you did as well, that, you know, this is the opportunity to have us or the select board drive the language rather than have it done through the ordinance petition process. There were two, we had so much discussion about this. There's two bars here. And there's the bar of getting the recall in front, and then there's the bar of up for a vote, and then there's the bar of how the recall succeeds. So we were constantly trying to say, well, we want to make the bar high enough so that people aren't being recalled for basically doing their jobs and being representing their constituents and being recalled every other week for, you know, policy decisions, and also making it a practical thing that people can use, right? Because if you set it too high, it's never going to happen. So we looked at all other charters, did a thorough review. One of our board members looked through a bunch of them and summarized them for us. We ended up really looking to, we drafted the language based on what the constituent had recommended. We used a lot of Colchester's kind of structure. And so that's what you see before you, the two bars being to get a petition up for election, 15% have to be registered. There's also grounds for removal, so it can't just be political or policy challenges. And I believe we base that language on another state's recall statute. There's also the Board of Civil Authority to act as kind of a check on that so that people are actually being recalled for those grounds. And then there's the last check of how many voters have to vote in favor of removal or recall before it actually goes.
Kendall, you got a
I
question?
just had a question on how you came up with the 15% of the voters versus 5% with normal thing. I'm just curious how you settled on that number.
Yeah, that's a good question. We did a review of the other charters in the state. I think it was between like 15 and 30%.
Yeah.
And we aired on the side of 15.
Okay, so that was actually the lowest.
Ethan.
I just had a question, and I don't know if you found this in the others or have the answer, but how do they define, or should I say, how do they define or back up the grounds for removal, the definitions of those words?
Yeah, I think it would have to, that could be done through policy. And it could be done through whatever the town or the Board of Civil Authority decides to, or the select board just decides to establish there, but they're pretty broad. That said, they're all misconduct based, malfeasance, crimes, gross incompetency. I think our thought was if somebody's going to override the will of the electorate in electing somebody, it has to be pretty strong grounds to remove them before the next election comes up. So I think the grounds would be showing that somebody's engaged in theft, engaged in corruption, hasn't showed up to meetings, hasn't done what they're supposed to do, is engaged in criminal activity as a select board member. So,
Yeah, my one I should have just said it to begin with, but
yeah.
My question was more towards, and not that you didn't answer correctly, was to misconduct.
Yeah.
Because the term is broad and it doesn't specify if it's as an acting board member or as a member of the community or all these other things. So that's when I was asking people. I was like,
it's broad.
how who decides what's misconduct?
You'll notice elsewhere in the charter we also changed the term incompetency for similar reasons. And you're absolutely right. That's a broad term, and you could either define it through policy or remove it from.
So sorry to cut you off.
No.
But so gross incompetency is in this paragraph.
Incompetency, yeah. I think it was used as a term for somebody to be as being incompetent. So you're right. That's there. It's
That's that's kind of where when I was reading through it, I was like, everybody has an opinion,
right.
And I could think that you are doing something that you're not, and you could think that I'm doing something that I'm not. But if I had,
you'd have to establish it.
So that's where I was just like, to me, it was more of a legal thing,
right.
Like, is there, how do we say this is
right.
what this word means, and these are the items that fall under it, and this is how we stand our ground to it.
Yeah, and I think
So-
that was our challenge with incompetency. I think there's like 5 different definitions depending on the context. It's always a struggle just as a regulatory attorney and doing this. You don't want to be so specific that your document's not nimble and flexible enough to last, but you want it to be specific enough that it can be practical. And you can either do it in the document or through policy and interpretation afterward. But when you leave too broad a window and you don't have the time or the opportunity to clarify, it can really bring challenges. Excellent point.
Tracy.
Along those same lines, I'm curious if other examples of charters that you've seen differentiate between just a crime in office or a conviction in office, and knowing that there are different flavors in crimes, not only misdemeanors and felonies, but what type of crime and whether that matters.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good one for review. This language is from South Dakota, and we actually removed some of them that were some even broader terms in there. So I think that would be a good thing to review and to look at other town, see if they even mention crimes in office. I think we were looking to South Dakota because there wasn't a lot of specificity of grounds in other charter in Vermont, and we wanted specificity of grounds. We didn't want it to be so broad that it could be a policy dispute.
Go ahead, Ethan.
Kind of a comment / question, my memory isn't always the greatest, but doesn't Williston have a recall provision?
Under
Or the
Underhill, yeah,
Underhill was the one.
recently enacted it and used it.
Their town
Did you-
clerk, there was somebody that they wanted removed, and so their town clerk lobbied to get the charter changed. We did look at Underhill, we looked at Colchester, we looked at Brattleboro, we looked at
Windsor.
I mean, there's probably, I think there were 15 versions of it, and the constituent brought us some, and we and Margaret, our committee member, did a thorough review.
Yeah, that's kind of what
Yeah.
I thought when I was reading it. I was like, I love the idea, and I mean, it was actually July 11th. I was just thinking back to what I was trying to say when I first spoke tonight, but July 11th in our minutes of the meeting, select board meeting, when we passed the approval of the charter committee and gave staff the opportunity to advertise, the main thing that was mentioned by Ms. Tofia in the minutes was, is this going to be a overhaul? It said, or are we just going to focus on the recall provision that was brought to us and some language changes? And then as I was reading the recall provision, I was like, we need to do this, but this is going to be a challenge to make this the right wording.
Make sure the wording is, right.
So
Right.
We had a lot of back and forth on
Yeah.
this one, and
Yeah.
again, we were like, who's better to decide this than us?
Right. So that'll be our challenge with the help of with town staff and legal counsel.
Yeah, if I could just speak to process for a moment and get out of the content. So if you end up deciding to do something like the recall provision or to choose one or two things, the way the statute, state law, not just the charter, lays out the timeline for getting this to town meeting, you'd have to warn it tonight. You have to warn the public hearings tonight. You don't actually have to present proposed charter changes for another few weeks. But you could say we want to have a public hearing to include a recall provision in the charter. Then we would spend the next 2-3 weeks, your next couple of meetings, figuring out what that language might look like, what's going to be specific enough, but also give enough flexibility that the charter committee is trying to accomplish. And we could do something like that. You then have 2 public hearings before you actually have to decide to put it on the town meeting warning. So you could always pull back and say, we don't have enough specificity yet. We want to take some more time to work on this and bring it back at a future meeting. That's just, again, getting into the logistics, getting into how it might play out. But long story short, there is time to, if you choose 1 or 2 things, try to craft it a little bit more and figure out what's something that you want to propose to the voters.
So we have meetings on the 19th and the 30th, which would possibly be the 2 public hearings on it. And then we would have to.
We have it in the
Yeah,
we have the
you got it.
timeline in the packet. I don't have it memorized. I think you could You
Friday
warn it
the
tonight. You could talk about more of the specifics at your next meeting on December 19th. Let's see.
That's just an odd one. We don't have to warn the final language later.
January 3rd is when you would have to adopt the official copy and submit amendments to the clerk. So your January 3rd meeting is when you have to have language pretty much dialed in. You then have 2 public hearings where you could change it again. We're getting pretty close to the deadline at that point.
Did you say the 30th?
January 30th is when you warn town meeting.
Okay. But you have to
Oh,
have
yeah, yeah,
2
there's
public
not.
hearings before
There's not one.
the second?
There's only one meeting.
You would have public hearings on January 17th and January 30th.
Oh, okay. I was looking at December. I'm sorry.
I'm in the wrong. I was in the wrong.
Somewhere there's an extra meeting stuck in there, though.
Yeah, I thought it was
January 30th is a special meeting. You're going to have to have a meeting on
Right.
January 30th for warn town meeting and to have any potential.
So then there's 3 meetings in January.
There's 3 meetings in January. We have to have one in the
Right.
time window
Right.
that's required to warn.
No, I knew that, but there was a missing date or something.
Yeah,
Wait a minute, I
I
have
was
5
missing-
on my calendar. Okay.
I was mincing months there. I was
Okay.
thinking, right, it's still December.
Yeah, I was looking at December's calendar.
Nope, no problem. So,
Okay. So, yeah, all right. All right. So, and then just to be clear on the reason why a recall provision, nor you have to have it in the charter in order to do a recall, is because in Vermont, the only way to remove a select board member is to vote for somebody else the next time they're up for election. There's no way to force, there's no way, the select board can't kick somebody off. People ask me that question all the time. I got several emails about it this past week. Can't we just kick people off? Like, nope, can't. So just saying that to make it clear that this would be required. It's the only way you can remove the way a member can be removed, and it has to be done by the public. It's not a select board action to it's come by petition from residents.
And there has to be grounds for removal.
What's that?
And there has to be grounds for removal.
And there has to be grounds.
Not right now.
No.
So right now, it just, but it
Right
can
now,
be
it
done
can't
by
be done.
ordinance.
No, it cannot be done by ordinance. It has to be in your charter.
So this individual who says he's going to petition for an ordinance to change
No,
it.
well, he's using the wrong language. He's going to petition for a charter change.
Gotcha. I see.
And then whatever he brought, if it was approved, would be
Right. If he
our
brought, if
charter.
a petition came to us with a charter change, the select board can't change the language except to make corrections to it or to correct legal things or whatever. But yeah, it goes lock, stock, and barrel to the voters. All right.
Ready to go? So the next is not a new policy change, but I think there's a lot of questions about accessibility. And so we included the term town website and we moved away from the book and the 5 postings. Website is used in many other charters. I think Colchester, Shelburne, Montpelier, Hardwick, Springfield, etc. Not the name of the website, but using the website as a way to address what we thought was Greg's concern about mailing that annual report. And I think you all talked about it, sending that massive annual report out every year, the cost, the sending of it. So we were trying to use other things. I think 1971 or 1973 in the statute specifically says, posting 5 times within the town rather than having the book in the office to flip through. So we were just trying to think of different ways to increase accessibility of documents while reducing the amount of staff and cost of all these things. I think appointments of the select board 209 is the next big change. We heard from the staff, we heard from the public, and we heard from committee members. They want the development review board. We heard from one staff member, I think she probably works with the zoning board now, that they weren't able to switch to the development review board right away. And that's the reason for the timing here. We were giving them a year to flip over to that structure. Cemetery commission, folks felt that should be a permanent committee that is mandatory. And the energy coordinator was a request from the public as well to ensure that that position was appointed and was able to attend and a member of the DRB, or maybe the planning commission, the planning. Any questions on that?
Skipped over local option tax.
What?
You
We haven't
skipped
got
over
there
local
yet.
option
Oh, I did. I'm so sorry. I thought it was.
I don't think we've got there yet.
No, that's so
Is it?
sorry. I haven't gotten
Okay,
there
maybe
yet.
I've got them in the wrong order.
But I will definitely get.
But okay, so on the you talked about DRB, energy coordinator, and energy coordinator, right? Those are the two you just.
Oh, and the Commission on Public
The
Safety.
Commission on Public Safety. I believe the transition, if we want to transition to a DRB, we do need a charter change to do that.
Believe so. Yeah.
Because it specifically says we have the current charter says we have a planning commission, doesn't say we have should say we have a DRB. In order to change to that the other way, we need to do that. That's a discussion that we have not had yet, or it's come up periodically about whether to do that, and I guess I should stop trying to start a discussion right now, but it might be a big one. If you want to bite out right now.
I think that moving to a DRB structure was in the merge charter, was it not? The proposed
Yes.
merge charter? I mean, that's had legal review.
we
it's had
took that out of that.
discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
It would
So I
be-
don't think it's that big of a lift. So it should have already had review through that prior process.
It does. The planning commission would remain, I believe, and it's the zoning board of administrators that would be changed to the DRB.
With the roles change of the people in those.
Just to respond to Tracy, and Andy's right in that it's the planning commission stays, but exactly, they have different roles with the DRB. I don't think it's a heavy lift necessarily from a legal standpoint, but I do think it's a pretty significant difference in how we do development review and planning in the community. Personally, I think professionally, I think it's a good move, but I also think it's something that warrants a lot of discussion, feedback from the planning commission, zoning board. I don't know that's one that can really be turned around quickly and have a community conversation over the next month, but I do think it's something that is absolutely worth looking into.
I would like to point out that the energy coordinator position is allowed by state statute and it was brought to us by a citizen. That's why that was added.
Doesn't need to be in the charter for us to have that.
Well, if we're going to do appointments, we wanted to make sure we covered everybody that could be appointed. So
Oh, yeah, okay. I guess it's not clear what I mean, is this a full-time position? Is this because we hire lots of people that aren't defined in the charter.
So this would, by including it, it would make it mandatory. That's
Right, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the reason to include it.
Yeah.
And there's further discussion of the role, I believe, later on.
that's correct.
That was the request from the public that would be made a mandatory position.
So that's another discussion we'd have to have. Did you find it in our proposed budget for one? But, go ahead.
I'm gonna just really quickly go a little bit. But the appointments, I haven't had a long time to really button these all next to each other and figure out what had moved where or whatever. But was there ever a day, a time frame for appointing with the committees like there is with the select board? And then with the select board, how did you guys get down to 45 days?
So you're jumping ahead a little bit. Yeah,
I know.
I'm happy to do
But
that.
it's like I thought that they used to be together, but then now it's like
The
two
fa-
separate things. Because in the appointments, what we were just talking about, it doesn't include the select board.
You're not appointed. You're elected.
Right, but if there's a vacancy
There's a vacancy.
That's always been in the select board section.
in the
right?
select board section.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 45 days that was requested by a committee member to have that in there as a proposal, and 45 days just in case there were any vacancies. And I noticed Chair Watts
You can call me Andy.
It's just, I'm looking at it, and it's the first thing. It's the biggest letters. It's what 45 days of the vacancy, and Chair Watts pointed out that there's no select board review of that. So a committee member recommended it. We included it for your review.
And I just wasn't sure if that there was, or if we considered about a time for, like, I know we're usually good about it, but making sure that the appointments by select board in the 117-209, if there should be any inclusion of, filling in a reasonable time. Obviously, if we don't have volunteers, we can't appoint anybody, but I guess the same could be said with the select board with the 45 days.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm reading too far into it, or if that's something
Yeah,
that
no, I had the same question too.
So I don't know.
The town manager should never have the
authority just
to appoint a
appoint
select board
somebody.
member.
I mean, if let's just say like right now trying to do this, right? So we have exactly 28 days to make a final decision. Our next meeting wouldn't be for another 15 days after.
Right.
So if we didn't make a decision by the 3rd, and then our next meeting came, we wouldn't be able to make a decision on that day. The day before, Greg could say, not that Greg would, I'm just using an example. I appointed somebody to fill this position.
Right.
So I was just kind of worried about the timeline, and then I was like, why don't we have a timeline for the committees and commissions? There's just questions that I have.
And we advertise for months for
Right.
some of these positions.
And we
If
don't
you
get
don't get a
anybody.
volunteer, you don't get a volunteer. And you can't just walk out on the street and say, hey, you're going to do this now.
Right.
Voluntold.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's
It's your civic duty.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So
Yeah, no, that was a proposal. It went from 60 to 45. There's not a lot of.
I had to throw that out there why we were talking about the appointments, because it was on my mind.
And I think it would apply to these appointments, just by virtue of the way it's written. We did not consider the select board angle, and that is a very good point. So if you were to adopt this, I would recommend excluding select board members, but I don't speak for the committee as a person.
Tracy?
So another question, I know for the Commission on Public Safety, we were waiting to have a recommendation back from Essex Best. Have we heard anything on that?
I just got an update this morning that I think they're going to take up some proposed language
Tomorrow night.
Wednesday?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Hey.
You'll probably see something soon.
Okay.
They are continuing to work on it.
Okay.
I don't know if I can tell you or if I should wait and let some. They're going to recommend a community advisory board versus a police commission, I believe. But they are meeting tomorrow night, and they have an awesome plan to set forth before you. So
Ron did bring that to our attention, and members felt that they wanted you to again review the commission approach. And members of the Essex Best were in attendance.
what else you got, Andy?
The other one was the local option tax section.
Yeah, moving through here. So I think option's the next one. Where it was. So the local option tax is it's a variation from what's in the in the statute. So that would be the reason to include it here. Is it has more. It requires not just an ordinance, but public vote on the ordinance and election on the ordinance. So or a public vote notice.
So I think that's currently what's in statute. I don't think that we can't, the select board can't unilaterally establish an ordinance that establishes a local option tax.
So again, it's brought to you for your consideration, like all the other policies. You can feel free to remove it or
Yeah.
have the discussion.
Tracy?
I guess I actually went to the statute and compared word for word. The only difference is that the wording before us says specifically cast by Australian ballot, where the state statute indicates at an annual meeting or meeting warrant for that purpose. I did think this was included in my comments, but in order to move an initiative to Australian ballot, it's my understanding that it has to be voted on at annual meeting. to move that business to Australian ballot. I don't know whether this would be an acceptable replacement for that vote at annual meeting. But since we would be voting on the charter by Australian ballot, I think it circumvents that process. But anyhow, to be continued on that front. The other item that I see during the retail cannabis discussions, I was pretty vocal about, the state should establish a 1% cannabis tax that's we can implement, the town as a whole could implement via local option tax. However, it does not exist within state statute currently. So I think that I appreciate the inclusion, but I don't think that that's possible, unfortunately.
I was wondering if we could, so my thought was Senator Vyhovsky attended the meetings and said we couldn't do it unilaterally. I thought maybe if we did it as part of the whole, or if it was passed as a charter. Again, though, this is just like recall, just like the other provisions. This is a policy we thought worth considering. The other towns, St. Albans has it in their charter, and I've heard that, it has to be in that exact language in their charter to be accepted. Shelburne's moving toward it. And so that's why we decided to include it in the charter, but of course, does not need. It's a policy for consideration.
Okay.
It's my understanding that if a municipality votes to enact a local option tax, the language gets put into their charter. They're not voting on a charter change to add it. I think the legislature puts that content into your charter to give you the authority to do it. So this is the other way around, where we're putting in our charter, giving us the right to have a vote, but we already have that right. So it's a lot. So, given the timeline that we have, and there's many other questions about little small details throughout the document as well, and 720. How much do we want to start going through the section by section? Do we want to decide on these 7 big things? Are there ones that we want to focus on to try to get something together for a March vote, and have legal counsel review the other language changes to see what we might be comfortable including? What's the thoughts on how to proceed, Ethan?
My thoughts coming into tonight were the 2 that stood out to me were the power to set fees and the recall of the select board members. And then upon further information from legal counsel or staff or our board, our committee that we have, maybe we could find other items that are achievable. But I feel like those 2 could be achieved for this vote. And if we did go that route, I'd hate to ask, because you guys have just done a tremendous job, but if we got to the point of we wanted to do these 3 things or 4 things or 2 things or whatever it may be, I would like to see all the clerical errors changed and the language changes, the minor ones that are in the current document. So maybe we could get 2 or 3 things changed, clean up the document, be confident that we can present it and pass it. But those are my thoughts.
And consider whether to deal with the rest of them moving
Next
forward.
year.
Tracy?
I when we were initially discussing the charter review committee, I never intended it only to be like 1 review and done. My take on it is it should be a continual committee so that we're constantly looking at what should be a living, breathing document and updating it accordingly. If we already have that committee that's discussing it, that has that expertise, we can adjust faster in a shorter time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my preference, is that, you've done amazing work. I don't know how you got all this done in 9 meetings, quite frankly. So thank you. but my preference would be to, like Ethan said, I think power to set fees, recall of select board members, and then keep working on the other ones as time allows within the next year, so that next March, we have a longer runway to warn these for next March.
Kendall, thoughts?
I like the staff's recommendation to really have the adoption in 2024 versus 2023, but focus on the recall provision for 2023. That would be my suggestion. It seems to be the one that is the hot button topic, and I think it's going to take a little bit more work to get it 100%.
I think before we make any decisions, we should have public input. See what their hot button. We're here to represent them.
Yep.
I mean,
Let me go back to that.
I think some of the things that we've put in here are more important than what you're, asking, but that's just my personal opinion, but I'm here to represent the public, so
Yep.
I'd like to hear from them.
All right, we okay with opening up to the public for comment? All right. Anybody want to comment? Any hands in the room?
Can't
See
see.
hands.
My
Lorraine, I see your hand up.
screen's gone over here.
Oops, sorry, unmuting. Thank you, Andy. A couple things, and Lauren can correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't attend all the meetings. I missed the first couple. Attended, I think, 3, and I am a member of BEST as well. We are meeting tomorrow night, and we are going to recommend, as Dawn said, we're going to recommend a CAB instead of a commission. But the thought about the public commission, public safety commission, is because we're finding also there's holes in public safety that isn't necessarily in the purview of the police. So it probably merits more looking at, and perhaps maybe some of that could be covered by the housing commission, because I'm hearing people are coming to me with complaints about fears around reporting landlords and health issues in their apartments. And I don't know how best to resolve that in our community and to make sure we're taking care of our residents here. It is a serious problem that we need to tackle. So I don't know if that might be better under housing commission too, linking in with the police somehow or whatever, but that's the context. And the other thing is my recall on this with Tanya weighing in on the marijuana, on the cannabis tax, was that it is not legal yet and that it couldn't go in there. So I have a different recall than Lauren does. I think what Tracy was saying was what Tanya had said during the meeting, but it might be recorded, so you might want to go back and look at it. And I was the one who asked for the energy coordinator. And the reason I wanted it was because I want it required in the charter so that we're coordinating kind of what Tom Yando is doing now, but I want it, and not saying that we need to hire staff, could be a volunteer, whatever, don't care how it's handled, but I just want to make sure in terms of going forward with climate change that that we're dovetailing that and that there's some oversight in our planning or development. Thanks.
Thanks, Lorraine. Yes. You-
Public, because I'm a member of the committee.
You
Am I allowed to speak?
yeah, you can. Come up toward the microphone, introduce yourself, and
I wasn't sure if I was public, so that's why I was like, I'm public.
yes.
So, just for the record, I wanted to publicly thank
Can you
Dawn.
identify yourself, please?
Oh, I'm Alexis Dubief and
Thank
a
you.
member of the committee.
Thank you.
Dawn came to every meeting, and her institutional knowledge was essential and very much valued. And I don't think we would have been able to get half of what we got done without those insights and that knowledge. As a member of the committee, I never understood our job to be to add a recall provision and clean up language. So if that was the mission, I think we missed it. What we approached this was as, what do we think the best charter for Essex would look like today, given public input, staff input, and hours of research. And I just kind of wanted to share that I did some rough
calculations just before we came to the meeting. I believe this document represents at least 150 hours of work, if not 200. It was a significant amount of research, outreach, and that doesn't even include all the members of the, like Lorraine and other community members who reliably came to meetings. So I hear the logistical constraints. I'm a little disappointed because we were sort of reaching for more than like one little change. And the one thing I would really encourage you to consider is, yes, a recall provision is important. It is unlikely to have a massive impact on members of the community going, in the next 12 to 24 months. The bar we have suggested for recall is very, very high. So it's not something that's going to happen commonly, if at all. I would encourage you to consider the just cause evictions policy. I understand that it is a big step. I understand that it has been vetoed in the past. We do have a supermajority. I do think that vetoes will be handled much differently moving forward than they have in the past. This is something that is actively harming Vermonters today. When I looked into the laws in Vermont about evicting people, it is shocking because there are none. You do not have to wait until the term of a lease ends. You can evict people for no reason at any point that you so choose. And that is happening with great frequency and to great harm. And I think if there is only, time and energy to pass one or two things, I would strongly encourage you, for the sake of the more vulnerable members of our community, to consider that as one of the things you would put your time and energy into. Thank you.
Thanks. Lorraine, I see your hand up. Is that an over from?
No, actually, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention, I appreciate Alexis saying what she did, because I was there also for the just cause eviction, partly because of what's happening to some of our renters and that they have no protection. And that's part of the fear of them coming and living in sub health conditions in our community. So I really appreciate Alexis bringing that up. Worked with Rights and Democracy, Tom Proctor, as well as Tanya Bihalski. Unfortunately, Tanya is in DC this week, and Tom can make himself available. And I also have a frequently asked questions document to make it a little bit easier. But Tom was so in the thick of it in terms of trying to get it passed in the state, and it losing by one vote in terms of overriding the veto, that he really is the best to handle it, because it does seem like it would be an ordinance. But unfortunately, because the way the laws are in our state right now, it has to be in the charter in order to hold water. So thank you, Alexis. I really appreciate you bringing that up.
So there's no outlook to have a statewide?
So they are not getting ground. When we discussed this during the meetings, what I understood from Tom is they're not getting a lot of traction in terms of changing the state law for every single town. But there is support for allowing a town to decide it themselves through these charter changes.
Right. I see Rachel Lazat. Your hand is up. Go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you. I just quickly wanted to say that wanted to thank the members of the committee for all the hard work that they did. I listened to a couple meetings, and I just wanted to call attention to their amazing work. And I'd also like to note that that there were individuals on the committee that were somewhat new to town government, which I think should be celebrated. And I wanted to just make sure that the select board, understood that how much work went into this and how hard they turned this out, or how fast they turned this out. And it's pretty amazing. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rachel. Anybody else? I don't see any other hands. Don?
I just hate to see you break this all up, given all the work that went in it. And I'd like to see us that we could do with more than 2 things.
If I may, I am able to provide answers to Chair Watts and Chair Delphia's questions. I don't know if that would be helpful in considering other, not here, but maybe in written form at some point. I don't know if that would be helpful in deciding what to consider. Provide those.
I think that'll be helpful. I think just the challenge that the select board has tonight is they have to warn a public hearing, and you have to get specific enough as to what's going to be considered
Oh,
at
I
that
thought the
public hearing.
draft.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
so we couldn't just for the hearing say is to approve proposed amendments. We don't actually have to list the amendments,
You have to get a bit more specific.
or could we say to possibly include, and then you could do your 7 changes? Doesn't mean you're going to have it, but you could just word it so possibly including, and then your 7 things.
But there's 45 changes instead of 7. There's 7 initiatives.
Where do you get 45 changes?
Well, I'm just guessing off from the strike throughs and added words, but
Well,
that's the
700.
entire document.
That's a lot more than this.
Well, I'm talking
But a lot of it's just word.
items. I agree. I totally agree. I don't know. I mean, if you don't want to backpedal on any of this, then I mean, is there a thought that we don't pass anything this year and maybe we get a petition in the spring? Maybe we don't for the recall provision, because once that petition's signed, that's what's going in our charter
And we have to call a special meeting to
to address it.
I know that, Ethan. That's why I'm saying if we include that in the possibility, it takes care of that petition coming to the board, right? I don't know.
No, I think the other.
I'm new at this. I don't know.
No, it's an interesting idea. I think part of the challenge of it is if you go to, going to get to the next section on the agenda fairly soon, but in that question about whether or not to warn a public hearing for the charter, the language, the recommendation from VLCT is that you can either do a strike through and a few changes, or if that's too unwieldy, the select board can decide that it's going to do something different. You have to provide a pretty concise summary and say what's in there. So once we get to it, there's a draft public hearing notice in there that has 18 different bullet points about what the potential changes are. And to be able to have a staff review and a town attorney review the implications of that, to have a valid discussion or robust discussion about what each of those changes mean and the impact it's going to have on the town, that is where there's just not enough time by January 3rd to really put forth a proposal of we're going to stick with this or stick with that or change this or change that. And none of this to say that these changes aren't worth considering, that they're not worth putting forth. It's just that they may not, it's, in my opinion, it's too much to do for town meeting this coming year. Not to say we can't continue with it throughout the year. Look at March of 2024, but that's when I was saying take 1 or 2 of these many changes that you want to focus on. That's the one that we have time to do a legal review, a staff review, and be able to really vet it and understand it. I don't mean to diminish the work at all. It's a
No, I know.
tremendous amount of work. It's we're getting into the next step and the timing of what that next step is going to take.
So if you did just cause eviction, recall, and fees,
One.
fees. So we warn those 3.
May I speak?
I'm sorry.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think what you're hearing, what you heard from Alexis, and what I'm feeling a little of, and that is not to say that your approach here is incorrect. I think you're hearing a little bit of frustration because we did, we came in September and like, what do we have to do? And when we heard what we had to do, it was so immense. We're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? How are we going to rewrite it? And we did it. We worked hard because that was our understanding of the mission, was to do a comprehensive review and rewrite. We had no idea it was, but if we had only 1 or 2 sections, we would have been golden. So you're hearing the frustration of just like, seriously, why didn't we know this in September? That said, annoyance and frustration about what shoulda, coulda, should not drive policy decisions. And we understand, things get lost in translation. So to the extent that you need to choose something to do tonight as a public servant, I hear what Greg's saying too. You want to do it well, and you don't want to do it hurried, and you don't want to just blow things up, because I don't think that effectively gets the changes we want either. So, or what we've recommended either. So if the plan is to address these changes more comprehensively next year and do a focus policy in terms of what the committee, I can't speak to the committee for the committee on this. I can only speak as myself on this. I would understand that approach. I'd still feel frustrated given the effort we undertook, but I'd also really very much understand that that is the way that this has to happen.
For my own ignorance, do we have to vote on the charter at town meeting? Or can you hold a special meeting just for the charter change?
Can hold a special meeting,
Well, I mean,
but it has to happen at a town meeting.
it has to happen at a town
Either
meeting.
the annual town meeting or a special town meeting.
Okay. I just wondered, I mean, the charter change is a pretty big thing. You have to get a lot of the community that has specific concerns about specific ones. It might be worth considering that. That might bump your timeline up versus next year, 2024. Just something to think about.
It's expensive to have an extra election, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's doable. Having spent the last several years working on merger proposals and then separation proposals, these things don't always go as cleanly as anybody wants them to. And so I hear your frustration, and I totally get it. Yeah, this is hard work, and you guys, I said, everybody said you this is amazing work that you've done, and calendar were different would be a different story here. The other, and this is and it's thank you for the work, and this is going to be hard. The other piece, Greg, that you didn't mention, you mentioned that if it's a general rewrite, you can vote on the entire charter, but if we have specific line items, things in here that are big issues, do we need to ask a separate question for them? I recall that back when we first started the merger charter discussion, this question came up because there was a municipality that passed a charter change that had big questions in it, and it got rejected by the legislature because they said that your residents should have had the opportunity to vote on the individual questions rather than as a whole. Because if we're adding a recall provision and we're adding a just cause eviction, those are both big things that may require individual questions. And then we could have, so you end up with 3 questions or 4 questions. One about a just cause, one about recall, and one about general rewrite. I think it's my memory, and we could check with legal counsel for sure, that if you have big questions in your charter change, you should ask them as individual questions so that people can have the opportunity to vote yes on some and no on others.
That's a really foolish question, because technically we're establishing a new charter for the new town of Essex. So we're technically not rewriting a charter. Is that correct?
There's
Oh,
no
we
new
are.
town of Essex versus the
Just
same
small
town of
town.
Essex we always were. We just have part of it has been removed from us.
I was just thinking it was
I-
trying to work a way around this, but
I don't view us at all as a new town. It's the same town we've always
Okay.
been. There's not. Yeah.
I would say for the purposes of moving this forward, if we pick 3 things, and if we have to list them separately, we'll list them separately for change.
Right. Yeah, that's a mechanics question. I guess
Yeah. I don't know.
not really
I
relevant.
remember like the very first time, many years ago, when the first time the local options tax came around, it was they voted on having the local options tax, and then it would have been implemented into a charter change. It was a separate, you're right, item to be voted on and not, and then the charter change came after. If it had passed, it would have been, it was worded. So you may be right. They may have to be voted on separately. Whatever we chose to do.
I saw Tracy's hand.
Thinking. Sorry.
Okay.
You can defer. Kendall?
I was just going to say, you had asked if there were any particular items to put on the warning for the town meeting. Maybe take these big items like the Just Cause and the other ones that we have discussions about and have those as an item on town meeting. Then you would know after town meeting if it passed or failed, where you could incorporate it into the document, and it might not be quite as extensive a process to change the charter at that point.
So we would need to have the language that would be going into the charter for each of the different changes. I'm not sure what you're suggesting.
I would bet that the committee with legal could probably get the language adjusted before town meeting for an article. Potentially.
Yeah, we would have to do that, right? Yeah.
You'd have to approve all the changes to be, not approve, but approve or adopt tonight. Approve the 7, essentially everything, in
Yeah,
order
the
to
big-
give them that opportunity to make any changes with legal counsel and then present it to the public, which would be on what, the 19th?
So we would need to
So you have 2 weeks.
do all that before the first of the. We would need to have something to present at the first. There's no way to vet this entire charter
Right.
by the first.
That's
So I think, unfortunately,
what I'm
yeah,
reiterating.
to be selective, put forward. You can do it all.
You need to have something by January 3rd, which is your first meeting in January. That's when you need to finalize the language you want to present as a charter change and submit that with the town clerk. You basically have 2 meetings to finalize language.
So I'm sorry, this is for my learning purposes only, but how long do you need before to warn a public hearing? That was 2 weeks.
As far as the charter goes, you need to warn, when it comes to a charter, you need to warn a public hearing.
30 days. Isn't it?
It's in one of the memos. Bear with me as I find it.
Oh, but in the timeline, let me scroll up.
You need to warn the public hearing 30 to 40 days before the public hearing is held. And you have to have a public hearing a certain amount of time before town meeting. So
So,
based on your meeting schedule, you'd have your first public hearing on January 17th and the second one on January 30th.
right.
So I've heard fees, select board recall, and just cause as.
I guess my question is if any of the other language, in the broken down bullet points, veering away from the gosh, I can't speak tonight, but the big initiatives, the new initiatives. Is there anything that we see on that list that looks to be clerical errors or corrections that could also be included? Because I mean, if we're gonna go through and adopt anything, I think the main goal that we had on the 11th of July when we created the committee was to clean up the language generally, just singular words and things like that, and then the recall provision was one of the big ones. But if we do decide to move forward with one thing or 2 things or 3 things, I think it's very important that we still attack those words that you guys have found and addressed. So my question would be, are any of these other items just wording and not new, as far as like changing, can we add them? This is just questions. But I'd like to see, if they spent all this time to do this, and then we just add in the recall provision, leave all the old language exactly the way it was, I feel like it's a waste. I wouldn't,
We could, so may I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. In terms of warning it and doing something tonight, I think it would be hard for us to boil down what those changes.
Right, exactly.
So,
And we don't have to.
Right. I would think, if the goal is what Vice Chair Delphia said, would be to come back and review. I would hope that whatever committee convenes next year would take the document work that we've done so far and work from there. If you don't, I mean, there are many things I could say, or just be from our perspective, clarification or word changes, but I don't know what that would stir up. It's just been the five of us.
And I guess my question on that is, can we be more general with just cleanup language and approve or warn a public hearing for general cleanup? And then we have some
addition
runway
to-
to identify
You
what
could
those are.
you could warn it that way. I think that's the question: is what is a general cleanup, and how long is it going to take the town attorney to review what it?
And what is somebody going to object to being not noticed because it was not general cleanup, but more substantial?
Clarification question for you, Greg. Could we say that we want to warn the recall provision, the just cause eviction, and
Fees.
the fees, and general verbiage cleanup, and then that way when we go through, we don't like one or the other way, we don't have to do anything with them, and then that way when we do the vote also, it'll be each of those three items
Mhm.
given to the public to vote on,
Mhm.
and then the general charter cleanup as a whole. So that way, if the recall provision isn't included, let's say they say no on everything, but we pass the cleanup because the language isn't extensive in the change, and that would give them time. Well, it'd give you 35 days or so. But I don't know.
Yeah,
Question again.
I think the more specific you can get, the better. So I think if you say, shall the town consider, there's going to be public hearings on consider charter changes to include a recall provision, to include fees, and to include just cause eviction, and then you can vote on each one of those questions if you get to that point. The general cleanup, again, it's back to the earlier conversation. What is being specific enough to allow, but still allow flexibility? And I think until we can define what a general cleanup is it spelling errors? Is it updating language? It's tough to know how long it's going to take the town attorney to vet some of that stuff in addition to those other three things. I think if you went so far as to say those three things plus a reorganization of the structure, then it's, the language is the same, it's just putting it in a different order. That, to me at least, comes across as more specific than general cleanup. I think if you say general cleanup, what is that? Is it changing some words? Is it adding commas? Is it what?
Yeah. Every time you change a word, you risk changing in meaning. That's. Yeah.
I was thinking and I'm all for all of you adopting it wholesale, but that's not going to happen. But I'm thinking of one of the things, it talks about the town manager's authority, and the current one says the town manager, with approval of the select board, shall appoint. And Greg was wondering, well, we don't really know what it means to have approval with the select board, so we changed it to after consultation with the select board, he shall do this, or they shall do this, and Chair Watts disagreed with that interpretation of that phrasing. So we thought it was a cleanup. There's an alternative interpretation, and that's the kind of thing that I think if we just said, that's what's hard. It's not just a misspelling. Grand juror for a lot of us was anachronistic, but then was outdated. But then some folks might feel differently about that. So what we thought was a cleanup might ping off a bunch of reverberate in a way that makes it requires more specificity in the notice. So I think that's a challenge. I understand.
Yeah,
Dang.
section
Trying to give you
section
some-
by section by section
I know,
review
sorry.
and discussing which words to actually use.
Right. No, I
takes-
get it.
takes a very
Just
long
like
time.
the questions I had with the recall provision. I mean, the meaning of a word. Like you
Mhm.
can Google a word and
Mhm.
there's 7 different meanings depending on how you say it in a sentence. It's
Tracy, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just, this is the thought it was forming earlier and it just didn't want to come to fruition, but it has now. If we approve something such as reordering the charter or general cleanup, can we then remove that from the public hearing? Can we not do that
We're not ready
going
to do it,
forward?
or-
Can we change our minds after we say?
My understanding of it is that you can have a public hearing and decide after the public hearings whether or not to put something on the town meeting ballot. So I think you could warn the public hearings and then decide we need more information, or we're going to change it, or we're going to put this question on as opposed to that question. That answer you're asking?
It does. But I also think just based on what you just said, that that's going to be a really, really heavy lift just to get into the word for word legal review. So
To your point, though, I mean, if you warn it fairly generally and say general cleanup, and I know I go back and forth here because I am, if you say general cleanup, then it gives you enough legal room to then say, oh, at the first meeting by general cleanup, we meant these 2 sections with word revisions versus 45 change of sections. So you could almost pick and choose which ones you wanted to bring to the public hearing. It
And
would
that's-
obligate you, though, to bring something to the public hearing, so you'd have to find some misspelling or something.
right. I was just thinking how it could be scalable enough where we could do something, but not obligate us to do, eat the elephant all in the next 2 meetings.
We have several documents. I'm not sure if you had the side by side, etc., that we could probably help clarify some of the changes we made, maybe do a markup. So it would be easier for the board to review if that's something you were interested in doing.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. But I'm not sure. I mean, we need to decide something tonight.
You need to decide something tonight, and I'm sorry to say this, but you also have the budget to finalize, the capital budget to start.
Yeah.
The holidays are coming.
Yeah.
Be time off. Staff's taking time off. Attorney's probably going to have some time off. There's a lot coming up. There's a lot going on. So keep that in mind too, of what's manageable.
I'm just noticing that Bruce Post has his hand up. We already had the opportunity for the public to speak, and we've come back to the board. Anybody we okay with letting Bruce speak?
Yeah.
Bruce was a committee member as well, so.
Yep. Oh, Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, I had my hand up a long time ago. Before you got into the detail here, first of all, on the town website, it does say a mission for the Charter Review Committee, and I'll at least do the first paragraph. The mission of the Charter Review Committee is to examine the existing Town of Essex Charter and propose any revisions. For instance, residents and select board members have brought up the possibility of including a recall provision and more about water and sewer rates. The Charter Review Committee is expected to review other municipal charters to consider other possible ideas for revisions. So I'm not trying to be defensive or anything, but this committee certainly has met that mission. And it was a broad mission. We didn't write that mission. Somebody did. Somebody who represents the town. So the amount of work that went into this, I think, reflects the parameters of that mission. And I know you have to make some decisions and go ahead and do it. I would still put in, I would make DRB one of the things because we already addressed it in the merger, proposed merger charter that the select board approved whenever it was last year, I guess. And so there's experience with that. And when I was on the board, I was pushing for a DRB. There's a lot of recalcitrance in this town to going to a DRB. And I think it's time to get over that. So I would certainly choose a DRB as one of your priorities. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce. All right, so we need to move the meeting forward here. So we feel about DRB. No, that's been brought up too. I think the bite is getting bigger.
I would just mention that, like Don said, any of those big items that the public needs to weigh in on a vote should be included in public hearing.
Yeah, well, yeah, would have to be, right? And again, we're working on we're moving toward town meeting, getting ready with all the other things that have to happen to get to town meeting, finishing the budget, which we haven't talked about yet tonight. The capital budget is gonna be a big piece of work. And holidays. We had been talking about power to set fees, select board recall provision, and just cause. And I would say that we should start with at least a reorganization of the charter. Again, I know there's a lot of words that are there that could or probably should change. But I think and perhaps we were totally unrealistic when we thought we could get to a big charter revisions when we started this whole thing. Thoughts? Anyone? What do you want to do?
Well, I think the revision is absolute, but it's such a short window to get it done, and there's going to be a bunch of questions. So I would still consider having a special hearing for your charter after town meeting if you really want to get into a shorter time frame than we're waiting until 2024.
Oh, so you're suggesting that we separate this from the March town meeting and do it at a different time?
Yeah. And take the big items and any of them that Don mentions that have to be voted on as a change, maybe include those as an article at town meeting. And then you could do the charter change and the wording and everything and have an actual charter meeting for approval in July or whenever was convenient. You could move your timeline up that way, but you wouldn't have to have it all complete ready for March 2023 or wait all the way until March 2024 to approve it.
So you're suggesting a vote as to whether or not we should include something in the charter change, then do the work on the charter change language for it?
Yes, because you mentioned that some of these items might need to be approved by the public as far as do they want a DRB versus the planning commission, since it's a major change of the charter. So have that as an article at town meeting to go to that versus the other, or have your just cause eviction as a specific article. Do you want this included in Essex charter specific, different from state law currently? So
I think the work's the same because we still have to know what the charter is going to include in order to warrant it to be voted on.
Yeah, but at least then you could focus on the work that the committee has done on these very specific ideas that need to be voted on by the public.
Oh, so you're suggesting only doing the big ticket items for town meeting in March and leaving the rest of it for a potential review later.
Yes, because then you would know that way you wouldn't go through all the public hearing and convert it to get to March, and then they turn down the charter because there's they don't want a recall provision. Just a guess.
We can separate the major questions anyway, but the question we're getting.
So I'm not.
Yeah. So I think we would end up if we were to to successfully get to town meeting with all three of the major things intact and ready to be voted on, they would be I think they would be three questions anyway, because if somebody likes the idea of just cause but doesn't like the recall option, they can choose which one they want to vote for, which one they want to vote against.
Okay.
I think my recollection of other stuff in the other communities, I think that's a requirement. You do it that way. I don't think I'm willing to pay for a special election for doing the rest of it. I mean, doing the reorganization and word changes. Maybe I could be convinced otherwise, because it is a lot of work, and
You could do it.
waiting for an entire year to do it could be painful too.
Yeah.
We could, certainly lose any momentum we have right now. Where you see?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of focus us on, I think that all of us agree from what I'm hearing that we want to take on those additional items. I don't think we need to decide tonight when that is.
Right.
So sort of just focusing on the question at hand of what do we want to warn for a public hearing to move at least that forward in the process, and then we can come back to those other items and set that timeline separately.
So I guess I'm going to propose that we would have power set fees, the select board recall, and just cause, and a document reorganization.
It would be just reorganizing, no cleanup, just
Right, 'cause as soon as
relocating sections.
as soon as you change a
But-
word,
Okay.
you're into long discussions.
They already reorganized your charter. They
Yep.
made it readable. So why would you want to do that again?
I'm not asking to do it again. I'm just saying it's going to be it's something that would be voted on, because we can't reorganize it without a vote. I don't think. Maybe we can. I mean, somebody took all the words select man and select men used to be in there 63 times. Those all disappeared through
Right.
somebody's action. I don't know who did it. There was no, when I asked our state reps about it, they said they never voted on it. So I don't know who
Aye.
changed it. So can we just ask for a reorganization of the chapters without a vote? Maybe. I don't know.
I'd rather see DRB go in there than reorganization. Only because
Well, we can add
DRB,
4.
DRB was in our merger charter to start with, and people were really interested in it.
So, I think there's a lot more politics around that, because some of the, we'd have to, I think we need more discussion on that, because there's a question of whether, oh my gosh, I don't want to dredge all that back. up.
That's all right. Just
Well,
I'm
go ahead, move it on.
I'm
Andy,
not
it's
in
fine.
favor of that, but I'm just one vote.
I don't know if I want to open this can right now, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about whether it's political or not. It's putting it out there to see what the public thinks about it.
Yeah.
Like, what do they want it to be? Do they want current state, or do they want a planning commission and DRB? It's come up before. There's nothing saying that we couldn't push out that date to 2025 to take effect, to give us more time to adjust and have those discussions. I mean, it's been brought up numerous times before, is the only reason why I brought it up initially. But I mean, if we can always, if something goes haywire, and we can always not move forward with it if it's going to cause harm, or if we find that it needs a whole lot more work than was already written.
I'm going to do this right now. So I make the motion that the select board authorize staff to warn a public hearing for January 3rd, 2023, to present new initiatives to our charter, the power to set fees, just cause eviction, recall of select board members, transition to a DRB, and a reorganization of our charter.
A second.
I'll second it.
Done. Discussion.
Clarification,
Yeah.
Yes.
January 3rd.
That's what I was trying to find out where you got that date. That's sorry.
We'd recommend the 17th and the 30th.
Oh, the 17th. I'm sorry.
And the
I
30th.
apologize.
Need to warn two.
Those the 17th and the 30th of January 2023.
Those are the dates that we had recommended.
Sorry, I jumped. I was thinking the 3rd for some reason. I apologize.
I guess it's clarification. Thank you.
You okay with that, Don? Second. Greg, this is a big lift. You've told us that we have to have something we need to be able to present.
You're going to need to finalize the language for January 3rd. That's where the
For
January
January
3rd.
3rd, correct.
Yeah, we'll get you as many comments and language as we can for December 19th, and then we'll take the feedback and do what we can with it for January 3rd to try to finalize it. It's
Make a comment.
Let's vote on the floor.
We're
Are you
discussing
discussing
it.
the vote?
Yeah, yes.
Well, you said make a comment. You did. Okay.
Well, I know I threw it
Yeah,
out there, but
sorry,
I just wanted to add a comment that if this is approved and we do move forward with it, we still have the ability not to put something on the ballot of these items. You know, we can't.
That's our understanding, right?
So I just wanted to reiterate that. Let's start with more. Hopefully finish with more, but it's just something to go with.
But it also requires that town staff be ready, that give us recommendations for what we go forward with by the next meeting,
By the
2 weeks
third,
from
right?
today. Yeah. No,
By the third.
within, right, by January, by the first, right, the 7th.
we'll want to present you with something by the 19th.
We will
and
need-
the final
we need
draft
to-
by the 3rd.
We'll
Yeah.
need to go.
28
yeah,
days.
We'll be doing the section by section, word by word discussion. You won't be looking at all the changes that are proposed, just
Right. Those items.
so to reiterate and be clear, that you said, sorry, I just want to, it's my responsibility to make sure we all know what we're voting on.
Yep.
Power to set fees,
Yep.
just cause eviction,
Yep.
select board recall, transition to DRB, and reorganization. Any other board member comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Nay. I think it's too much. All right. Motion passes 3-2. And move on.
Well, I would also hope that the staff would come back and tell us it was too much too. I mean, if it can't be done, let us know.
Well, we're going to warn the public hearings, and we'll
Yeah.
start working.
I can offer, we have a very concise outline of this section, how this section is. This section, we also have each of the languages, the in subsections, each of the divisions. Give those so you have a copy to give the attorney. At least gets the ball rolling.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay, so did that then cover a business item, both A and B?
Yes.
Okay, so business item C, consider awarding contract for reappraisal.
Karen Lemna is here.
Karen,
Hello. Can you hear me?
yes, we can.
Okay, what do you want, what do I need to say?
Karen, just, we talked about, if you could explain maybe the CLA and the trigger that was hit. So we're going to be starting a reappraisal soon. We've gone out to, you put out an RFQ and got some responses. We vetted them, and we have a preferred vendor for the select board to authorized me to sign a contract on that, but we thought it would be worth bringing to the select board, talking about it in the business. It is a big thing. We haven't had a reappraisal since 2007, so we wanted to draw some attention to it and start talking about it. In addition to taking the action of entering a contract, but also wanted to give the select board a chance to ask questions about what it looks like and let the public be more aware of it than they have been up to this point.
Okay, the CLA currently for the municipality, which is combined, the city and the town, is 85.08. And the new CLA comes out January 1st of 2023. And based on my calculations, because of the equalization study I just finished up, we are going to fall below the 85% or 85, below the 85% from the state of Vermont, which then mandates a reappraisal. So speaking with management, we decided we're going to be proactive and go ahead and start proceeding to look for a vendor to do the reappraisal. So we sent out some RFQs, the request for qualifications, and we sent out to 4 major approved reappraisal firms because we have to go with what the state approves. And then it was also posted on Vermont Leagues of City and Towns website. It was placed on our website. It was placed on the VALA, the Vermont Assessors and Listers Association website, and we only received 4 responses, which is good. And those were reviewed by Greg, the town manager, myself, the assessor, and my coworker, the assistant to the assessor. And based on the qualifications and reviewing the information, because we're also looking for a new CAMA system, which is the valuation system, we felt that Patriot Properties Incorporated really filled all of those qualifications, or we're definitely qualified for it. And so that's what we're recommending, is to go ahead, and the reappraisal wouldn't be completed until April 1st of 2025. It would start June of 2023. And it takes quite a while to complete, so it would be the grand list for April 1st, 2025. And it would be a town-wide, or excuse me, municipal-wide, so the city and the town would be a reappraisal for both combined.
All right, thanks, Karen. Any questions from board members?
It's still combined because the funds all came together. Yeah.
The funds all came together, and we also, during the negotiations for the separation, that was one of the agreements that we
Share our assessor and the assessment.
right, that the starting with years next year,
2023.
2023.
fiscal year, is it FY24?
We're in 23. We're going to be in fiscal 24.
So starting with FY24, right, the city will pay a portion of the appraiser's office based on number of parcels that they have, percentage based on the percentage of parcels that are in the city, until the reappraisal is complete, because it was anticipated it was coming up. And so yeah, and all of the funds, right, that came from the state are pooled together, and that's what will be used. It will pay for all of it.
My only other question was, there's only one fee and it's 750,000. Were there 4 bids that came in with dollar values attached to them?
We put out, Karen, I'm going to start, but jump in after me.
Yep, go ahead.
We put out a request for qualifications, which is something that we do sometimes if it's opposed to just the price. We also want to figure out somebody who's qualified.
RFQ.
And so we look for experience, how it's going to be done, the type of software that's going to be used, what the process looks like, past experience in similar communities, as opposed to just the cheapest price.
Okay.
Because we want quality and we want people to pay a little bit more for it. In this case, the preferred vendor that we went through. It's Patriot. I think most, if not all, of the RFQs also included a price. The Patriot price was one of the lower ones, and we felt they were best qualified. So,
Okay.
best of both worlds in this case. And
Yes.
correct me if there's anything I missed in there.
No, that is correct. And also with the camera system. And so everything included was better than the other three. Everything that they included for the reappraisal, which it also includes a new software system, the annual fee for the software system, all of it combined.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm not questioning not having to take a low bid. I just thought that, I mean, for transparency, it'd be nice to see all prices and say the best firm was this, and it's easy to justify that. Just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Any other questions? So with this targeting the April 1st, 2025 grand list, it would be effective with FY26 tax rates.
Yes.
Starting on July 1st of 2025, yes. For fiscal year 26,
Right,
correct?
right,
Yep.
right. So the September 2025 tax, the tax payment that people have to make September 15th of 2025 would be reflective of the
On the reappraisal.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's yes. Clearer to say it that way because right, FY26 begins in 25. Right. Okay. All right.
At this time, I make the motion to select board approve the awarding of the reappraisal contract to Patriot Properties Incorporated and authorize the town manager to execute the contract.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Tracy. Any further discussion? Oh, my apologies. We didn't go to the public for comment before the motion.
Okay.
So, although it's sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, I should have
I can do it again.
stopped you earlier, but everybody okay with making an exception here and allowing public comment, even though there's a motion on the floor? Any public comment or questions? Don't see any hands in the room. Don't see any hands online. So, okay. Any select board discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the next item of business, discussion and potential action about updating the Town of Essex logo and website design. Are you, Tammy?
Hello, everyone. This is a bit two-part. Just one is more informational to let you all know that we are actually at a 4-year mark of having our website launched, which is kind of hard to believe, but time flies. And at that 4-year mark, we are eligible for a free redesign at no cost. Redesign could mean many things if we decide we want to add different features or take away different features. I mean, the cost could change, based on that. But for the most part, it's something that we're eligible to receive. We are, the Essex IT department, we're involved in looking at doing some of those changes that would be beneficial for certain departments, particularly like community development, the rec department, to see features that they're looking for, that they need to be trained on. One of the things I noted in this memo was that we launched the website in 2020, early 2020. And of course, we all knew what we were all doing in early 2020. We were packing up our bags to all stay home for a couple of years. So our IT department became very engaged in getting setups at home. They had other huge things they had to do. So this redesign work that we're going to be doing is going to have a focus of really trying to learn how to use these tools, do some additional training for our staff. So I'm pretty excited about it. I've already had some conversations with some of our departments, and so this is kind of a bit of an informational part there for you, that there's going to be some exciting things that we're hopefully going to be laying out for you.
The second part of this is that with the redesign, there's been some discussion as to, you know, maybe we would want to think about updating our logo to kind of coincide with that. It's been discussed before, possibilities of having, you know, an update to the logo, but if we're going to launch a new design, I'm hoping maybe by the summer of next year, it would be great to incorporate possibly new colors, a new look, you know, rebranding. And I think that that's kind of the excitement that I'm getting from a lot of staff, from residents. And so I put forth that piece of this, you know, item to you to discuss, to see if there's an interest in pursuing a new logo. The recommendation from, I've had some conversations with Greg, with IT, you know, and I think that our staff could possibly come up with some, based on some feedback possibly from you, put forth a few designs, and then we have opportunities. We have annual meeting, we have the annual report coming out where we could maybe put forth some designs to the residents, have them vote on it in time to be able to incorporate it into the website. So that's basically what I'm putting out there, is to kind of give you a little bit of an update, and also to just to see if there's any interest in doing some work with the logo.
Thanks, Tammy.
Yep.
Any comments or questions? Ethan.
I thank you for that last part, because that was all my questions, almost.
Cool.
But that was one of the things, because at the organizational meeting for the select board, one of the things that came up and we tried to keep on there was the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's very important, and I love to see that word in here, because we have the opportunity, like you said, to change the logo, but we also have the prime opportunity right now to reach out to the residents, you know, come to an agreement with staff and the select board about the brand for the future of Essex. And I love the idea of having multiple options and allowing the public to make the final decision, because I think that that's so important. And not that our current logo is bland, but I see a road into some hills, and I don't see a lot of what's Essex. So I love the idea. I just had those same questions, and thank you that you answered them, for developing a brand, making a logo that is representative of our town and how we hope to see our town, and giving the community the final say in both of those ideas. So thank you.
Thanks, Ethan. Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree exactly with what Ethan said, that is a choice for the town to come up with a new logo and not the board. In a lot of towns, you can just get a picture of their logo and you know exactly what town it is, and I think Essex can do that. There's a lot we have going for us.
Anybody else? Any comments from the public? Margaret. Can you come closer to the microphone, please?
I would be thrilled to see a redesign of the website. It's just been difficult to find things, and the picture at the top when you click on Essex takes up an awful lot of space and doesn't do much for the image of the town.
Thank you.
So I would love to see that revised. So.
Anybody else? Lorraine.
It's exciting, you guys. I'm hopefully there'll be a way to have public input in terms of what people are having difficulty in navigating. And then the other thing I was thinking too, I don't know if this is off topic, but in terms of accessibility to the public, some people with learning disabilities in terms of reading, I don't know if there's any way to be able to have people be able to listen to some of the things that we post, and also just to make sure the PDFs are searchable whenever they go online. And some of the my sister Gina has worked on websites for a long, long time, and I think she would be a good person too, just to ask, because she's spoken a lot about some of the navigation issues. But I think it would be helpful if we're going to do it anyway, to find out who's having problems with what. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lorraine. I think it's required that anything that's up on the website needs to be machine readable. I think from the standpoint of, I think all documents up there should be readable by accessibility applications.
I believe so. It's ADA. The website is ADA compliant. That's one of the reasons we went with this website provider almost 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
But what does that mean? I don't know what readable means.
it has to be readable by a machine that can then read it out loud to the individual who has the appropriate equipment to do so.
Is that obvious on the website how you get that?
It's state law. It's state law that you have to do that. So it's a requirement. We absolutely all documents up on our website are machine readable.
My jacket.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if I clicked on something, I'd be able to figure out how to listen to it, or do you have to have a machine?
No, you have to have the appropriate
TTY or
application to do it,
Yeah, TT.
You have to have a machine that can do it for you. Interesting.
or whatever, or the right application. I'm not sure if it's an application or it's a physical machine, or if it's just a virtual,
Thanks.
application that does it. I'm not sure how it works, but it's a state requirement. Answer that question. And Tammy, I guess that's a good question. Do you intend to take public input, or is there going to be a process there for redesigns, or is it?
So the one thing I will say about the ADA requirements, I did have a conversation with we have a specialist that's going to be helping us specifically with just the redesign work, who's different than the representative who does the sales or the representative that answers questions. So I'm just only connected with them a handful of times. But one of the things that we can do is have them do a audit of our website to determine, okay, this is a problem. This is not meeting your ADA requirements. This could be improved. We can ask them to assist us with that and look at our audit, our website, and give us those recommendations. As far as the public input and we actually get it. We do get a lot of that already, which is one of the reasons why we do want to do that. The approach, I've not put that together yet, only simply because we are busy right now, and this is a project we want to take on after annual meeting. I'll have more time to be able to really organize things, and I do want to get some people together to kind of make those decisions and make a plan. What are step one, what is step two? The only thing I'm doing at this point is I'm just having conversations with department heads, and what tools are you using? What tools are you not using? Because this website has a lot of background tools that they aren't using. And some of that's because they don't know how, and we've not had that training. So maybe establishing at this point and at this juncture, all of our needs, putting this all on a list, and then we'll come up with a plan. And so this is just first heads up. This is on the horizon. It's coming, but I don't have much more than that to offer you right at this moment, other than it's something that we're looking at, and we will definitely take all of those things into consideration. I think it's great to have public input. Obviously, if people are having difficulty navigating to certain things, and we do get that now. And I have all those notes. I have tons of those notes, so we'll incorporate all of that as well. But the big piece to this that would be more of a time-sensitive part is the logo, simply because you have the opportunity to present it at annual meeting. In your annual report, you're going to have contact with your residents, and it's probably more so during that time than any other. So it'd be great to be able to at least get that done. Then when we know what that logo looks like, all of the other things, the colors and formats and things like that, can kind of flow with that. So that's why I'm kind of putting that first, and then the redesign kind of a informational. More to come.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a rolling thought from earlier, but how or when do you plan on adding this to an agenda on a select board to get input from the public? Like, how do you plan on getting input from the public before designing the logo?
I don't know. I think what I'm looking for right at this point would be, would you like staff to pursue it? That would be the first thing I'm looking for. And then I would probably bring this to the department heads, have more than just my head on this. I think, have a few people coming together and put a proposal forward to you to say, this is how we would like to proceed in getting that logo. So I need I guess I'm looking for a go ahead, like, yes, we want to get a logo. We want to redo this. And if you'd like for us to put together a committee in-house to make a plan to present to you, I think that might be a good approach. I don't want to actually answer all those questions all by myself without having a feedback from our own,
That's why I threw it out there.
Yeah. But
Well, that being said, then I make the motion.
There's a couple other hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tom Yanda?
Oh,
I think it's imperative that we do something with the logo because the sign up at the town common green needs and is in need of repair. And if I take it down, I would love to, when taking it down to repair it, I would love to put up a new sign that has a new logo on it. I've done some things up on the green with the library and with Memorial Hall. I wanted to touch the sign, but the sign has got still the old trees on it, which I believe is probably from 12 or 16 years ago. And so I think having a new logo and in consideration of where we are of trying to rebrand ourselves, I think it would be great to see something of a new logo for a new sign and do a reveal. My comments.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Irene Renner.
Hi, everyone. I love Tom's idea of a reveal. If any of you have the new Essex Free Library card in your wallet, I'd urge you to take it out. They have a fabulous new logo that takes off on the winding brook idea with a mountain in behind it, but it's very colorful. It has that consistency with our old logo, but it's a fresh redo. And for consistency's sake, I would beg you to take a look at that logo and see if you could use it or elements of it in a new town logo. That would save money, it would save time, and it would, again, provide that consistent look. But it really is fabulous. I was bowled over by it when I saw it, and no need to reinvent the wheel. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Irene. All right, I don't see any other hands. Any other board member comments?
I was going to comment that I've been continually impressed by the caliber of the staff and what the residents come up with whenever we ask them for something. So can't wait to see Essex's new logo.
All right, Don, you make the motion now.
I make the motion to select board authorize the staff to begin working on a new logo for the town of Essex.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ethan. Any further discussion? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Have at it.
But I would
Thanks.
also, can I just make, maybe Tammy, not just keep it in-house, but reach out to people that might be interested in helping you?
I think my first plan of action is to go to the department heads. Because like you heard Tom's comments,
right?
Also like the library, they may have a reason why they may not want us to use their logo. They may have a reason why they might support why we could use the same logo. And I won't know those things until we start having those conversations.
I'm just saying, don't do it all on your own.
Oh no. Oh no. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, moving on to business item 5E, continue fiscal year 2024 general fund budget work session.
So an update from our last meeting, we've adjusted some of the numbers that you wanted to change. The conservation reserve fund that's been reduced $4,000 from 8,000. The community events line was brought down to $8,000 from 8,900. Within that, we're proposing a breakdown of $5,500 for Explore Essex, 2,000 towards Juneteenth, and keeping another $500 or so for other events that might come up. Last year we had the step-in event to support our boards and committees in May. There could be something like that again, but just leaving some money available for things that might come up. We kept the Parks and Rec events line item at 2,900. No change to the library budget for this year. Still gathering information. Hope to have a bunch of stuff. Plan to have a bunch of stuff for you on December 19th. Essex Rescue, we're still working on getting a meeting with the other service towns to come up with some more information on that. Dan and I are meeting with VLCT later on this week for passive, so we'll have some updates to the insurance numbers there. Senior Van, Essex Junction has their first budget workshop tomorrow. I believe they're going to be talking about Senior Van and whether or not they want to extend that beyond next December. Capital budget, we are planning to have that for you on December 19th, as well as fund balance assignments, which might affect the tax rate and how you want to move forward. So with the changes that we do have, I'll just share my screen real quick. So rather than just reading a bunch of numbers, hopefully it helps to see them. With the changes that we have made, that brings the total budget to $15.4 million. The tax levy would be almost $10.9 million. The grand list is we're projecting to be $16.1 million. All that combines to look at a tax rate of 0.6759, 60, yeah. And the taxes on a average $280,000 home in Essex at that rate would be $1,892. That's an increase of just under $350 from the current year. So that's the picture based on those changes, and hope to have enough information for the 19th so you can make any other adjustments that you want to.
Comments or questions from board members? Go ahead, Ethan.
My comment, or kind of a question for Dan. I see you added in the percentage. Is that your number
The percentage for the
for the police department?
Oh, yeah. So if we that was Dan and Sarah and I talked that through, and yeah, it's a per capita split at 48.52.
That's reflected if you did the math out in the budget. Oh, just a good question.
Yes, if you jump in.
Okay, yeah.
I just didn't know if anybody actually crunched the numbers to make sure that or we're just saying this is how we set it up as a per capita.
No, it's we looked at the numbers, so
It makes sense now before.
You've got the entire operating piece.
Right.
That's 58.42. Revenue that's coming in is also going to be split in 58.42, so the whole picture is 58.42. Is that right? No, I'm sorry.
52.48.
That's right.
But so that's where the confusion was before, was the administrative cost. We didn't have that split.
Correct.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you for the change.
Any comments from the public? Hands in the room? Any hands online? This is just informational. Looks like a lot of things are going to button up on the 19th. From a timing standpoint, we're still good for warnings and so forth. So, right. All right.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
move on to the next one. Discussion about town meeting ballot and votes.
So just wanted to put this on the agenda so you can start thinking about it and talking about it. Town meeting, obviously, every year we have the election of officers, we have the approval of budget. Now that we're going back to floor vote for town meeting, we have the accepting the reports of the officers, which is the annual report, and department heads. We've talked about charter changes, and yeah, we'll be warning the public hearings for that. Just wanted to start thinking about anything else that you want us to start pursuing for town meeting. We'll start the capital tax discussion on the 19th, but possibility of looking to raise the capital tax to make up the funding that's been lost with the departure of Essex Junction and the tax base there, as well as potentially any other changes for the capital plan. Those are the things that come to mind, but wanted to discuss it with all of you in case you have other stuff that you're thinking of and want to look at for town meeting.
Wouldn't an increase in the capital have to be Australian ballot though?
Trying to figure that out. We have some different opinions and just trying to
Because
get a picture on that.
I thought when the budget matters went to Australian ballot, it was anything pertaining to the budget had to go to Australian ballot.
Quite possible, but I want to confirm it before I.
Okay, I was just curious.
It is on our radar to get that question.
I was going to ask if we go to the warranty replacements for the public works vehicles and such and step that up, is there any need to ask any kind of article for the public for additional funding in the budget to do that or to change that? Or
my thought is it would be wrapped into the capital plan and capital update. So we're working on that. Again, we'll present it to you on the 19th. We can take a look at what it would look like to do that sooner versus later. Long story short is probably either increasing the capital tax or not funding some other things to make that adjustment.
Okay. To follow up on that question, there has been a fair amount of discussion about sidewalks and how you have to pick and choose the sidewalks. Is there any interest in an article that maybe the public wants additional funding or a change to the way the sidewalks are done? Just a suggestion.
My thought on that is it's largely an operating expense. You'd probably need another person to do the sidewalk plow, and then you're probably going to potentially need another sidewalk plow as well. The sidewalk plow could fall under capital, but the manpower would come under the operating budget.
Yeah.
And my understanding of the interpretation of our charter is that we present one budget number.
One budget. Okay.
So you can't say this piece of the budget, this piece, all is separate questions and all this. It's all one question. So in order to do that, we would have to incorporate it in the budget so that then it could be.
Okay. Is there any reason just to maybe ask the question about we should consider in the future adjusting the operational budget to cover that? So there's no money involved?
So we have not historically done non-binding straw poll kind of questions. Something we could do. There's also, we often have, we put public to be heard on the agenda as well. It doesn't affect anything for the current year, but it certainly could be things where, folks could bring up issues that they'd like the select board to consider in the future. I think they should be coming forward to us now with those rather than at town meeting when
yes,
we're not getting a lot of comment.
No.
Ethan.
I would like to see us prepare the question about conducting future business by Australian ballot and, kind of just going through the legal measures of how do we need to word the question, what items, can we wrap in, what do we need to wrap in to make it so we have informational town meeting shall be passed. That's my initiative with our 2023.
Sorry, Ethan, I don't understand what you're saying.
So we have to warn the question in order for it to be to be voted on. Right?
So in order to move all business to Australian ballot, all town business to town meeting business to Australian ballot, we have to have a vote.
So in other words,
From
to
the
eliminate
floor.
Monday night and everything would just be Tuesday when you went to the polls.
Well, you could still have Monday night as informational presentation in person.
If you have all
what you're
business by Australian ballot, my understanding is that you have to have an informational meeting.
Right.
Which has to happen within 10 days before town meeting.
Okay.
Which could still stay on.
Yeah, and we've talked, Tammy and I and others have talked about it, but if you go to Australian ballot for everything, like Williston, for instance, always has their informational meeting the night before, but with so much early voting happening now, would it make sense to do it, have an informational
10
meeting?
days before.
Yeah, in end of January,
Right.
sorry, end of February. Those are logistics if we get to that point, but
I guess my other concern would be, so we approve the reports of the officers. One of those reports is the minutes of the previous year's meeting.
Mhm.
If you went to Australian ballot, that doesn't allow any correction of the minutes.
we'd have to look into,
Right.
answer some of those questions where we'd be far from the only town who would be doing
No,
this,
I'm just
but
saying
yeah,
that
I
would
know
be a
exactly
cons-
how it works. Yeah.
Does have any thoughts about moving all business? It does seem, I don't know, it's a weird situation where some business from the floor, some not.
What?
She
I'll make a
she
comment.
keeps opening her mouth. You put your hand up. So
I no, I traditionally town meeting. I don't know. I miss the old town meeting. I do and I don't, but I think that town meeting the night before, for those people that are still concerned about the budget, if you do that budget presentation, I think that's still an important piece that people can come out and see it.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yes, we still have to have an informational meeting, but there's just no voting at that meeting. And then you could do it also remotely,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so for instance, this year the budget is going to be done by Australian ballot.
Right. I know. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm guessing Andy or someone else in the select board, if you're running, since we historically have not had the chair do the presentation, we'd still do a presentation on town meeting night, that Monday, about what the budget is, about what's in the budget.
The chair doesn't even if when they're running it's the television. They don't.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay,
It's just the
sorry.
television.
Okay.
Yeah, I got that wrong last year. Ethan, go ahead.
So I just want to throw my case out there as to why this is important to me.
It's fine. Ethan.
Because and I agree, Don. I was introduced to Essex's government at town meeting. That was my first event. But I think that the large thing that drives this for me and a lot of people who I've talked to was the same reason we got the budget by Australian ballot, and that of a town of so many people and so many different views and ways of thinking and living, and it's so important to have everybody have a say, and having the 4 vote that we currently still have the ability to do is the inclusiveness isn't there. That's the same reason we changed the budget when it was 280 people, or excuse me, however many can fit into the auditorium. But I think that's what I've heard from people I've talked to was they'd like to see everything done and presented at once, because how many people are going to know if we warn this to have this future change, to this change that we could possibly have this year? How many people are going to show up for that vote, and people that want it or don't want it, or so it's. I'm not saying it's going to pass. I don't know if it's going to pass.
Right,
I couldn't
right,
tell you.
Right. It depends on who shows up.
It,
Yeah.
it really does. So, but it's just that's where I come from with it.
Appreciate it.
And I was going to bring up that item as well. I think about it. If you have 200 people at annual meeting voting on something, you're looking at less than 2% of the residents of the town voting on an issue. I think it's time keeping the informational meeting, keeping
Right, I like
the
that.
evening before the gathering. But I think it's time to conduct business by Australian ballot.
We don't often have additional questions either.
You know, I think if we look back, we'd probably be surprised about,
Yeah, I guess.
you know, it's not a ton, but it's one or two every year or two, maybe.
Was the police department a ballot item?
Mm-hmm.
It was.
Which part?
The
Bond
bond.
vote,
Oh, yeah.
you gotta do
Yep.
by ballot.
The bond votes by ballot.
And so there's a lot of
Yeah.
state law
I
about
wasn't
what
here
has to
then,
be by
so-
ballot,
So-
what isn't by ballot, unless you have everything by ballot.
So the request from Ethan is to get the information,
Just-
the language that we would need to
Right.
use, so we can have a
Understanding.
bigger discussion. I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna start looking at old annual reports to see if I can find questions and other than the budget vote that might come up, because I don't recall any specifics.
I know, I'm
But
trying,
there may-
I'm
there
not,
may have
they're not
been-
coming to
there may
mind,
have
but
been
I was
some.
flipping through some
Well,
annual reports.
A lot of
recently.
questions would come up with public works. A lot about the snow plowing came up, and a lot about cleaning out turnarounds came up. And it's just been, you know, a long time now since. Sorry,
No.
I'm old. What do you want?
Anything else? You bring us? All right, you have what you need?
Mhm.
There's no motion needed here?
Nope.
Public, any comments from the public? I see Lorraine's hand up.
I know there's hardly any of us left, Andy. I just have a couple of questions. Like, right now, legally, the way it is, because I know it changed with the EO, right? When COVID happened, in terms of moving stuff to Australian ballot. So legally now, is there anything monetary that could be amended at the town meeting? Like, say, if someone proposed to pass a lot, could that happen at a town meeting right now by statute?
No, you can't vote on anything that unless it's been warned ahead of time that it's going to be voted on. You can't make a proposal you can't pose a question solely from the floor. It has to be on the agenda.
But you could, so someone could do it now and it would be warned? Like, that's what Greg is kind of saying right now is, are there any other questions you want to put on now? So if someone pushed through something, it could be added and that could be done at a town meeting, like say a lot?
So if a petition came through, then yeah, we would probably, hopefully, depending on when we saw it, hopefully we would, that we would be required to put it on the,
So I think that's my concern then, is that's not, it really should be an Australian ballot, you know?
but Lorraine, it depends on the question. There are some questions that you have to do by Australian ballot by statute. So I think it depends on the question.
Right, I know that, but I'm saying to me, there's some danger here of, I don't think state law precludes certain things. People probably just haven't thought to do it, but I think legally, there's certain things you could really push through. And really, it is only about 200 people that show up, and the demographics, when you look at who's there, it's not a broad demographic. So I hope we do broaden our demographic by moving everything to Australian ballot, moving up the informational meeting because of early voting. I think that would be much more democratic. And I really appreciate this discussion, you guys. Really good stuff, Ethan. Good thinking. I like to hear your opinions. It's good to hear you guys, and all of you. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Lorraine. Anybody else? Right? Got what you need?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to consider authorizing town manager to execute contract with Williston for shared dispatch services.
Chief?
Anything we need to talk about first, or is this just we're going to?
Yeah, the agenda pretty much says what it is. I'd like to fill you in an executive session and move forward after that one way or another.
We will potentially come back out of executive session and have a vote. So, okay, all right. And then discussion and potential action about, what? Oh, sorry. What?
Maybe.
No, it's all right. I'm good. I'm good.
Go ahead. You can ask a question. Or
Nope, good. I'm good.
All right. Any public comments or questions? See any? Discussion and potential action about negotiating or securing a real estate purchase and lease options. This is a executive session discussion. So we'll circle back to that. Consent agenda.
I make the motion, we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
And-
Thank you, Tracy. Any discussion, comments? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we approved the consent agenda. Reading file. Board member comments. Anybody have anything to say?
Are we advertising for the energy commission committee?
Sorry, I didn't
Uh,
hear what you're saying.
Sorry,
Actually, and I can't hear
I'll
you.
speak up. I was just asking, kind of jokingly, if we're advertising for the energy committee.
We will if we haven't already.
Okay. And thank you, Irene, for the time that you gave us. And then one other comment I had, this is just general. I don't know if it's updated sometimes or not, but I find a lot of inconsistencies with the signing of proposals and amendments and things. Half the, like in the minutes I'm listed as, and this may be a little petty, but in the minutes I'm listed as clerk. Half the documents I'm listed as clerk. The one we saw tonight with the charter review committee, it doesn't list many others I've looked back at also by the same way. So I didn't know if there was
As far as when the select board signs everything and it says.
yeah, and it's listed chair, vice chair, and then
clerk.
There's no clerk. It's at the bottom of just
Okay,
my name.
well, I'll make
So-
a note and try to.
But it's
fill it
not
out, but
it's not
certainly-
consistent. Like if I could find a pattern, I would relay the pattern.
It's probably just
but it's-
different people putting it
every single
together
thing is
and-
different.
and
so
certainly
it's like I don't know how that works, but thanks for throwing me in there for the
Yeah,
minutes.
so and if we miss it, and you want it, just mention it.
I was gonna earlier
Make the
today, but
change
we
before
weren't
before we put it
signing
out.
or finalizing anything. So, but I actually was reading through today, and I guess a lot of the times I don't look at the signature packet until we sign it. By then we've already voted and approved things, so it's no big deal. I kind of just
Right.
throw it out there.
Right.
Thank you.
Anything else? It's been mentioned a couple times tonight. There's a proposal for a January 30th meeting. That's to get us in tune with the time frame, the time window in which you need to warn town meetings. It's been between 40 and 30 days before so we have in the past said warned the meeting effective a certain date, and we're not sure that that's totally kosher, but
Yeah, and it also coincided with the charter hearing, so
and
that
we
is
do
more absolutely you need to have it within a certain time.
we
so.
do need that meeting date for other reasons as well. Do we need to take any? I know we can't tonight because we didn't. It's not a warned item or not a business agenda item. But do we need to warn that meeting, or how do we take any action to
January 30th?
to make it appear on the official on the calendar?
We just warn it. It's a special meeting. We'll
Oh, and so okay, so the select board doesn't need to
no, you don't need to
make
take
a
any-
motion to ask you to add that. You just warn the meeting. Okay, that's what that means. Okay, all right, cool. So we should stop calling it tentative.
Yes, it'll be out.
Okay,
We'll have it.
all right, Greg.
I'm kicking myself for not including this in here, but we have a couple of coffee chats coming up related to the budget. So it'll be coffee with the manager. Dan Roy will be there as well, finance director. Got one this coming Wednesday. Double check my calendar. I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday. And Saturday, and it's just an opportunity for meet with anyone from the public, any residents who have questions about the budget. Once again, just trying to get the word out, tell people what's in there, what's proposed, why, and just have a conversation, a little bit less formal than a select board meeting, but hopefully people will come to that and attend. It is 11 a.m. this coming Wednesday, the 7th at Uncommon Coffee. And then we're doing another one on Saturday morning. It's going to be hybrid, 9 a.m. So just people can stay at home and pour themselves their coffee or tea or whatever they have for their morning drink and have a conversation from home. So hopefully people will attend and get some more information about budgets.
That one's not hybrid.
Oh, I'm sorry. Online only.
I was
I'm used to saying hybrid for online. It's online only.
I
Thanks,
was going to
Sammy.
ask that. Okay, it's online only. Okay.
Just a kickback for you real quick, but I'm sure you guys already have. But if you didn't, you can just throw that one on Facebook too. That way you
Yep, I'll double check.
get
It's in the newsletter.
I know, but just maybe a standalone post to try and get some feedback because we haven't had any. So hopefully we stir somebody up somewhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. Anything else?
Would it be inappropriate at this time to thank the Public Works Water and Sewer crew for fixing that force main, which I'm sure was a job well done?
Yeah.
I know ordinarily I'd say that at the beginning probably, but
It was like kind of an all-nighter, wasn't it?
And
Into
half
the-
the next
the
day.
Next day or two.
That was huge.
Like 117.
Yeah, I was driving by and I saw that big sinkhole there. And I'm like, oh, what's going on there? And then next time I came by, there was an excavator. Yikes. All right, so we
Mr.
have.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I move that the select board make the specific finding that general public knowledge of contracts would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0.
I move that the select board enter into executive session to discuss contracts pursuant of 1 VSA 313A 1A to include town manager and the police chief.
Thank you, Don.
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes 5-0.
I make the motion. I don't make the motion. Excuse me. Start over. I move that the select board enter executive session to discuss the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A2 and to include the town manager and community development director.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Tracy. Any further discussion? We will be coming back before closing out the meeting. Yeah, you don't have to stay, but we'll keep the online meeting open till we get back, and then adjourn from there. So all of